Well, okay. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hi, I'm Jim Harrison. I am an essential oil expert. Been doing it for, I don't know, 30 years or so. And, I've pretty much done, worked with essential oils in almost every area you possibly can. I've been mostly an educator. I've been a formulator, formulated some plant based skincare that was distributed across the United States. I actually owned a spa for a while and worked at a medical university. I actually worked with doctors. So I've seen a lot of what you can do with essential oils. And so that is what I'm going to share with you today. That's what I do. That's what I want to do with you. And today, let me kind of move some banners here. We're going to, get started. Love to get started. Whoops. I'm over here on a different screen pressing buttons. So if you don't see what I'm doing here. Anyway, this is what we're going to be talking about today. And that was my email address. So if you want to get in touch with me, yes, go ahead and get in contact with me. I am going to talk to you today about, it turned into actually a new system that I've been working on. And so our topic for today is how essential oils communicate. And I don't know, what does that mean? How essential oils communicate. Intention, story, structure, scent. These are the things I'm going to be talking to you about today. As I was developing this workshop here, this webinar, it actually turned into a new system for me to share with you, which, I'll show you how that works at the end, as what this presentation is all about, is explaining what that system is all about. But it's not just a system. It's not just what the system is all about. It's how you can use essential oils more effectively. It's my topic, using essential oils more effectively. And what I'm going to talk about today is in the title. It's about essential oil communication. Essential oils communicate. If in a way they have a language, and when you know what that language is, you're better able to use essential oils for therapeutic purposes with much better results. And there's a lot to that, right? There's a lot to understand about essential oils. And, that's why I'm an educator. It's what I do. I teach that. But this is for anybody who's using essential oils right now, or even wants to use essential oils. We're going to go off the path a little bit about what you normally learn with essential oils. So, if you take a course in aromatherapy, they're going to say, well, essential oils, and then here are the properties, lavender's calming and blah, 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 blah. And if you get a little deeper, they're going to teach you the chemistry. Lavender is calming because of linalool acetate and linalool. And the story goes on and on and on. There's just so much to it. Now, I've studied essential oil with some of the top aromatherapists in the world. It was, when I got in, it was a very small club. I mean, it is not a lot of people. And I was able to not only learn, but, actually hang out with some of these really, pioneers of how we're using essential oils now. These are the guys that created it. French aroma medicine is a big thing. And to understand French aroma medicine, when we get into aromatherapy, it's actually, this is therapy, right? It's the most, medical approach to aromatherapy would be French aroma medicine. There is another side to that, which is a little less medical. And, when you get into the emotional use of essential oils, it's a little softer. It's not so much about this hardcore, this is a compound that goes in there and, gets rid of your aches and your pains and all the other things that would be involved in a more medical approach. Essential oils are a mix of how we can understand them scientifically or medically, and understanding them in a little more from what I call a metaphysical perspective, energetic frequencies, things like that. These are ways to use essential oils energetically, metaphysically, pharmacologically, which is when I refer to them on a medical perspective, I'm looking at the pharmacology, meaning that they react with the body in a certain way that can be understood scientifically and physiologically on what they're doing to the body. There's a lot going on. There is a lot going on with aromatherapy, with essential oils, and how all that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a different perspective on how to understand the oils. And it's not new. I'm not really trying to, say, oh, this is a brand new thing about essential oils. No, it really isn't. It's just a different viewpoint, a different perspective, a different way of understanding how essential oils work. And so this is the journey we're going to take today. And in that journey, we're going to understand how the oils are functioning, working with intention. So when I talk about communication, I am talking about intention. I'm talking about suggestion, which is a term that I hadn't used until recently, and I'll explain why I brought that into the vocabulary and how powerful suggestion is, okay? So with intention and suggestion is more of the theme of how we're going to talk about how to use essential oils today. Now, when we talk about using essential oils from the perspective of what we're discussing today, we're talking about therapeutically. Now, what does therapeutic mean? It means that we're trying to address generally a symptom, an imbalance in the human body. And when we're doing, therapeutic, we're doing a treatment. So if you're a therapist, and you are the guys I really like to talk to, because you have so many opportunities to direct essential oils in your treatments. So what we're talking about today is how to direct that intention and suggestion in your treatments. Now, to understand where we're going with this is that first bullet point. Treatment begins with orientation. So what do I mean by that? I'm talking therapist, okay? But even if you're using the oils just for yourself, or the oils are being used for your family and your friends, or you have a small aromatherapy practice, and you're not a clinician, not working in a spa, or not working in a wellness center, or not working in a situation where you are the therapist, okay? So you can be treating yourself. Everything fits, okay, no matter how you're using essential oils. All right, so treatment begins with orientation. What does that mean? Now, I'm going to talk about this generally or mostly from the spa therapist perspective. So walking into a wellness center, anything that has to do with, a person comes in because they want you to fix or balance or correct something in their body. That's basically what we're addressing here. So what does the orientation mean? When you walk into a spa, when you walk into any kind of clinic, there is an aura, a feel, the feng shui, the aroma. All of these things are creating a feeling, and they're creating an expectation, which is a word I'm going to be using quite a bit here. So as soon as the person walks into that environment, they're starting to orient themselves. And what your entryway says, the person at the desk, the furniture, whatever, the whole setup, it's giving that guest a feeling. It's starting to orient them to what's going to happen. It's creating an expectation. It's creating an idea. It's creating a feeling. And so your treatment is starting right then. Now, the information is already being received. So like I said, the feng shui, the feeling of the environment, how that is set up, the aroma, the scent, which is a topic we're going to be covering a lot today, right? It's a big thing, aromatherapy, it means smell. So scent is really important. And what the fragrance is, what the identity is from a scent profile. When somebody walks into your business, is incredibly important because it's telling them a story. It's giving them a feeling. It's orienting them to what is going to happen, what the expectation is for the therapeutic treatment that they're going to get. So I've talked about this: presence, language, framing. I haven't really talked about language yet, but language is the main thing we're going to be talking about, because remember, the title had communication in there. Now, there's more to communication than language. We'll cover it all. Language is so important. So the presence, that's that environment. When I say you walk in, and it doesn't matter if it's a room or clinic, whatever. The aura of the environment that you're working with the essential oils in matters. So that's kind of the presence. What you say, and this is going to be the main topic of what we're talking about today. What you say is part of your therapy. So again, if it's a wellness center or a spa, a resort, whatever, the front desk begins the communication from a spoken perspective, the language that they use. So language is very important right from the start, okay? And the framing, what is the framing? Framing is all of this. You're kind of creating the frame or the box or the closure, the system that you're sitting in, that you're bringing that guest into. These are all important. And intention and suggestion, these are all elements of suggestion and intention. This is cool. What I'm going to be telling you is intention is a therapeutic tool. So intention as therapeutic communication is kind of the heading I gave to this. But intention, what you are intending to do, is part of your therapy. It's your goal. It's your focus. It's your intention. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about today comes out of the practice of self-help. If you've ever gotten onto Mind Valley, it's a great platform for self-help and for self-health in general. Great platform. And so there's a lot of the language that I'm going to be using today that comes out of a platform like Mind Valley, or Joe Dispenza is one of the more popular people. Deepak Chopra kind of sort of started the whole thing in a way, for what we're doing today. I mean, there's people who came way, way, way before him. But these are the people, and these are the systems that I'm following in order to create communication, in order to create language, in order to create an intention. And so you'll hear, affirmations, manifestation. These are the things that I'm bringing into this. Now, intention, like I said earlier, can be your focus or your goal. Okay. So intention, I can keep repeating that, right? When you talk about intention, you're saying, here's what I'm going to do. Okay. So how do you present that? What is the communication? It's the story that you tell. Now, what I talked about in that last frame was you're starting to tell a story in your entryway. You're starting to tell a story with the feng shui of the environment. You're starting to tell a story through the scent and the aroma that's in your environment. You're starting to tell a story from your front desk introduction. You're telling a story about your business. You're telling a story about the people that work in your business. You're telling a story about the intention of your business, which, if in terms of what we're working with, it's a therapeutic intention. It's about helping people become healthier. Wellness. So story is really cool. And story carries from that introduction all the way to the finish and final, and even into how you retail, which I'll talk a little bit about. Now, the words you choose are extremely important. And as I'll discuss as we go along, and this comes from, again, self-help, manifestation, affirmations, you always want your words to be positive. You want your words to be outcome-oriented. But even that is not an accurate way to say it, because outcome oriented means that there's something that you're trying to fix generally. And the outcome is that this thing is fixed. So to keep the language positive, and this again is manifestation, law of attraction, you want to try and keep your words to what you already have. So if you have acneic skin and you're going to your therapist, the language that is used is not that you have acne. The language you want to use is that your skin is clear and healthy. Your skin is clear, it's not congested. So the language that you're using is more outcome oriented, meaning that you've already accomplished your goal. Now, it is a little challenging to do that, stay in the positive, because it can get a little silly. I'm going to help you a little bit with that language. But in my, just to kind of give you a heads up, as I was developing this webinar, I actually created a new system that I'm going to teach. And I'll define that at the end here. So when you're choosing language and trying to be positive, you don't want to be silly. If somebody has acne and they're coming in for you to fix it, if you tell them they don't have acne, it's not going to go over really well, right? So there's ways to use the language that is positive. It's outcome oriented without appearing too silly, right? All right. So what is the treatment for? Well, the treatment generally is for outcome oriented. I have a system called Outside Inside Out. What that system is all about, it's defining what you're actually working on. Now, in beauty, we have beauty inside out, where what's going on in here and in here is going to show up on your skin. It's going to show up in your eyes as far as the clarity and everything else, right? That defines beauty. And so that's beauty inside out. Now, what I've done is I've created the system where it's a little more in depth, because in order to find out what's going on in a person, you need to know what their environment is. So you're really going to start from the outside. And, this can get a little tricky because, scope of practice as far as what your licensing allows. You're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, then you cannot work with terminology that would fall under that licensing. But you actually want to get the same information that you would get as a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You want to know what people's relationships are like, because the outside relationship is their environment outside, and how they internalize that is really important. So the most important thing you're trying to find out is what's the information that a person is exposed to. Environment, relationships, diet, the list is long. But it's not just that information. It's how that person internalizes that information. So I do have some videos on LinkedIn and YouTube that define the outside inside out system. And this helps you to find out what the treatment is for. Because using acne still as an example, why does that person have acneic skin? From the outside, you're looking at the foods that they eat. Are they eating organic? Because organic foods don't use the pesticides that can be endocrine disruptors. If they're using a lot of foods that contain pesticides, what's going to happen is they get endocrine disruptors, which means that the hormones are going to be out of balance. And when the hormones are out of balance, it can cause situations physiologically that cause acne. It could be stress related, meaning that you need to find out, work related, right? It could be environment. The boss, and the boss stresses his person out. And so they're always cortisol release, always in fight or flight. And yes, that causes congestion, inflammation, which causes acne. So what is the treatment for? Well, the goal, the intention is clear, healthy skin. Now, how are you going to treat that? You have all this information that you can play with. And that's the beauty of working with essential oils. They are so holistic. They're just so holistic that you can treat so many things, even with one oil. So yes, you can clear the skin, get rid of the congestion, the infection that occurs also with acne. You can do that with essential oils, but you can also reduce the fight or flight response that may be the direct cause of why the person has acne. So in order to know what the treatment is for, you want to communicate the things that you're using this for. The part of the communication is, what is your goal and what is this treatment? What are you doing? How are you defining it? Now, emphasizing certain aspects or leaving things undefined, this is all fine. If you have a person who tends to be more scientifically oriented, they like to know the whys and what's been researched, and do you really know what you're doing from that perspective? I said that with attitude, didn't I? Because people can have some weird attitude. But anyway, I love it. It's all good. Anyway, you want to talk to the person. And so somebody who really likes to hear the research, really wants to get those, the kind of depth of why you've chosen certain ingredients and what your treatment is all about. You can deliver the language. You can emphasize that, the physiology, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, especially with receptors on what we're binding with. You can talk about chemistry. You can talk about things like that. But then there are people who just are, anytime you even get close to mentioning technical terms, they just disconnect or lose it or don't understand. So with that person, you want to emphasize the movement that you're doing, the feel that you're doing. You're again acting. You're clearing the skin, but you're creating movement. You're emphasizing the movement, meaning that you're clearing out congestion and clogged and blocked skin. Now, you can leave things undefined. Like for that person, you're going to leave out the chemistry. I'm not going to tell you I'm using oxides and the anti-inflammatory compounds that are in helichrysum and things like that. I don't need to say that to somebody who isn't going to relate to that information. So there's certain things you're going to leave out. There's certain things you're going to emphasize, right? Depends on who you're working with. Everybody's a little different. You want to make sure that your story communicates to the person that you have sitting in front of you. Now, you also want to go through how it's going to unfold. And this, again, is storytelling. This is what the stories are all about. Why you chose this, where you're going, where it's moving to. Why is this going to, get the skin moving? Why is it going to be clear skin? Well, because you're creating fluidity, you're creating movement. And so as you start, you're starting with the language, you're starting with the product selection, and then your hands and the introduction and your opening and all the things that go along with your therapy. You're either verbally communicating that, or you're communicating it through the structure of your treatment program. Now, where is the attention going to be placed? And this again goes to everything I just mentioned, especially who you're working with, right? The person. The person is going to define a lot of the approach that you're taking through all these steps right here. So the attention is going to be placed on what you think that person will receive in the most therapeutic way. Like I said, the communication is therapeutic. It's part of your therapy. Words are powerful. Intention is powerful. Intention and communication are part of your therapeutic toolkit. That's what you're going to be working with. Essential oil identity. I'm going to pull this one up a little bit here as I talk about it. I'm talking about the essential oils themselves now. And, so we're looking at a list here where, the identity, chemistry, aromatic character, history, and then meaning. What is the meaning of all this? Well, let's take a look at what I'm defining as essential oil identity and signal. Okay, I'm using a few different words meaning the same thing. So when I talk about the signaling of essential oils, I'm talking about how essential oils communicate. Okay, so when I talk about the communication of an essential oil, we're talking about your intention and how you're using them. But now I'm talking specifically about the oils themselves. So the oils are made up of chemical compounds. The more you understand the chemistry of essential oils, the more accurate your therapeutic results will be. Or I should say, the better your therapeutic results will be because of the accuracy that you're giving to them. So the more you understand about the chemistry of essential oils, the more you can define that and use that in your therapeutic practice. So I mentioned a few things already, lavender. linalool is a compound that's in lavender. And that's chemistry. Also, linalool acetate is a common compound in lavender. Those two compounds are also in ylang-ylang. They're also in clary sage. They're also in marjoram. So when you look at these oils and you know that they all contain those two compounds, which are known to be calming, then you know each of those oils are going to be calming. This is what the beauty of the chemistry is about. It helps you to understand the depth that your essential oils can deliver. So chemistry is cool. If you don't know the chemistry, that's okay. Hang out with me and we'll make that work. I actually have 2 courses, Easy Essential Oil Chemistry online. One of them, and I'm going to promote this without really giving you any information, but it's with the Aromatherapy Institute of the Philippines. That's the English version that's now available online, Easy Essential Oil Chemistry. And then I also have a Russian version, which is through aromavision.ru, I believe is the website. And I don't speak Russian, but AI has me speaking Russian. It's really weird, but it works. And so I do teach chemistry because I think that you really want to learn chemistry if you're serious about working with your essential oils. And when you know the signaling that the chemistry gives you, you know, your therapeutic approach is just going to be so intensively powerful. It's going to be crazy good. Aromatic character, this is really individual perspective, okay? It's very subjective, scent is. And, you know, there's a thing that comes up in aromatherapy. If the person likes it, then they need it. Or if they don't like it, they need it. I forgot which way that goes. Just forget about that stuff, okay? Because scent identification, what we like and what we don't like, comes from our history of exposure. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, the olfactory system, memory, emotion, scent bonding. These are all really cool things to work with, and I talk about them a lot when it comes to working with essential oils. So the aromatic character also delivers a feeling, delivers an identity, delivers a story. It's a signaling. And if you smell a floral has a certain character. Now, again, it's very subjective. Everyone has a very individual exposure, and so an individual feeling toward the fragrance profile. But florals have a certain character. You know, they can represent love. They can represent third eye. They can represent so many different things. Spices, energy, heat. These are the feelings that an aromatic character can give to you, and it signals an identity. That's what it's doing. And I just put those 2 words together because I could have separated. It has an identity. It also is signaling a certain feeling, a certain perspective. You know, again, the science. If somebody is scientifically oriented and they feel that energy from one of the spices, in a way, they can feel the chemistry that this is healing or it's antibacterial, something like that. That's the aromatic character that you really want to pay attention to, and you want to use that in your treatment profile. Plant history. I did a talk recently on essential oils and spirituality. Well, where does that idea come from? It comes from the history of use. The history of aromatics has a lot of depth, which goes back to the spice trades, which, you know, like 5,000 BC. It's old, long time ago. And the oils that we use today have a history of use from that spice trade. So somewhat in flavoring, like when you think of pumpkin spice, you know, there's a reason why those are identified as a flavoring or a scent in pumpkin spice, because nutmeg, cinnamon, clove, these were all part of the spice trade. These were all incorporated into celebration, especially around the December holidays. And then there's also frankincense and myrrh, which are known to be spiritual. So the history, and we today, as aromatherapists and me as an educator, I'm actually creating that history, because what I teach you is giving an identity, it's giving a signaling. And if you pass that on, we're creating a history of use with the essential oil. Now, meaning, assigned through explanation. Everything I just told you gives you meaning. And so you're creating an idea, you're creating an outcome, and you're creating meaning through your words and your presentation of the essential oils. And the essential oils themselves have meaning when we look at the chemistry, we look at the aromatic character, and we look at the plant history. Now, the signaling guides the response. When you include language, it's not just the essential oil that's delivering that response. It's everything I've been talking about so far, delivering that response, and how it's going to be used therapeutically. Here's another way to identify essential oils. The plant reference as functional instruction. That's kind of a funny heading, isn't it? Let me explain a little bit about what I'm talking about here. Where the oil comes from can also create an identity. It can also create a therapeutic response. Now, this tends to fall in my category I call metaphysical, because it's an idea. You can't dissect this in a lab and find this information. So when we talk about root, which is ginger, turmeric, vetiver, probably the most used root oil, or the most understood as being a root oil that's very grounding because it smells so earthy. It smells like you're part of the earth, right? So when we think of the root, where it's coming from, and this can be explained in your verbal communication with your guest, because through your language, you're creating what's going on here. And this gets into suggestion, which is a powerful tool, which I'm going to talk about in a couple frames here. So I have a root. How am I going to describe that? Well, the reason we're using the root from vetiver is because we want to create more stability, more groundedness. We want to anchor you because your stress levels are, chaotic and bringing you way up here. And what we want to do is we want to pull that energy into your feet. We want to pull you to be connected more with the earth. What better connection to think about than a root, the trunk of a tree? And you can just look at this image here and just see the stability, the strength to be able to rise to such a height and still be so strong and so sturdy. When the oil comes from the wood, like the different cedar woods, Virginia cedar wood or Atlas cedar wood, Himalayan cedar wood, sandalwood even, it's coming from the wood. It's coming from that stability and that strength that gives that tree its ability to stand tall. So if part of your therapeutic outcome is you want this person to stand tall, hey, use a little bit of wood, okay? Flowers and citruses, both of these, and this is my interpretation. You have your own interpretation. It's part of your language. Make it work for you. So for me, florals can have a lot of different ways to feel and explain. But flowers and the citrus that peel, it's life force energy. It's sun energy. It's really that deep connection that the plant itself has with photosynthesis, I can say that word, sun energy and warmth. A lot of the florals and a lot of the citruses, well, all the citruses, I think, come from more tropical, warm areas. And so, this is the language that you can use when you get into referencing the plant identity. Scent, memory, and meaning. This is the olfactory system, which for me is so important to pay attention to when you're working on a therapeutic level with essential oils. Scent, memory, and meaning. So let's start with scent and memory. Every memory, every emotion has a scent attachment. When you're exposed to an odor, whatever's happening in your environment, the feeling, the memory, the situation. We've had that, right? You get a little streaming video that pops into your head when you smell something. Sometimes it's really powerful and very vivid. Sometimes it's just a feeling. You feel uncomfortable when you walk into a new scent environment. You feel energized. You feel uplifted. You feel friendly. There's so many different ways to understand our scent, emotion, connection, or the scent, memory, emotion bond. This is actually a therapeutic tool as well that I talk about in other webinars and my training that I do. So scent triggers memory. That's when I talk about that video that goes off. And it's going to trigger the memory that's associated with that scent, how you were exposed the first time to that fragrance is the memory and the emotion. Sometimes it isn't a memory. Sometimes it's just emotion, a feeling. So memory shapes therapeutic outcome. When you have the guest in your room, you are creating a scent memory bond. So what you do in your practice, especially when you do take-home products with the same aromatic formulation, you're sending the person home with that emotion memory connection to you, not to the scent, not to the product. The memory emotion is a bond to you through the scent that they were exposed to when they were working with you. So, I've kind of already said this, they carry emotional and historical charge. So again, anytime you smell something, it's triggering whatever the familiar memory emotional bond is from the first exposure. Smoke is always a good example. We learn that smoke means fire. And so when we smell smoke, we immediately go into emotion. We don't go into memory. We're not going, oh, I know that. What is that? Oh, it's fire. Okay. Yeah. No, what you're doing is creating a response. The feeling is fight or flight. You smell smoke, you immediately respond. You know you need to find out where the smoke is coming from, which generally means a fire. Okay? It's the memory bond. That's the emotion bond. The emotion is the more important thing. When you find clients that are maybe uncomfortable with some of the odors that you're using, it's because they have a negative association. It's always good to change, but it's a little tricky, depending on the products that you use. That's why personalization is the most powerful way that you could ever use any kind of product, is to make it for that person that you're working with. So the story you tell changes what the scent does. That's all that information I've already delivered, okay? The story that you tell from the start, from the time they walk into your space, the scent is creating an emotional connection with that story. So the story that you tell is so important. That's why your language is so important. Now let's look at the communication networks. This gets into a little bit of the science of how essential oils actually function when you use them. What I just talked about was the olfactory system. So when you smell, it's a molecule that goes up your nose. And at the top of your nose, you have a bunch of olfactory nerve endings. And it's like a lock and key. So the nerve endings are a certain shape, like a lock. The molecules that are scent molecules are a key. If it fits, it's going to trigger a response. In this case, it's triggering an olfactory response, which is a couple of different things, actually a few different things. One, it's scent identification. It smells like whatever it is, right? But it's subjective. It's how you respond to the fragrance and how you identify and describe that scent. So that's olfactory nerve endings. Now, all through our body, we have nerve endings or receptors, a lot of little locks hanging out on the surface of your skin that when you use essential oils, and you don't even have to put them directly on the skin, even in the environment, like go into nature. When you smell the forest and you're in nature, you're smelling the compounds, having the olfactory effect and sense of smell, but you're also, any exposed skin is also going to bind or communicate with those molecules. How are they communicating is those receptors. There's several different ones. There's TRP receptors. To understand TRP, there's one called TRPV1, and that reduces pain. So if you use clove, I believe clove is one of the ones that binds with that. There's a receptor, TRP receptor, that menthol. So when you use peppermint, the menthol binds with that receptor, and that's how you get that cool feeling on your skin. It's a receptor. It's a lock and key. The key is a menthol. The lock is that TRP receptor. It triggers the response, and oh, you'll feel cool all of a sudden. It's a physiological effect. The more you understand about these things, the more you can use them. And those are powerful. When you get into understanding the surface receptors, we also have olfactory nerve endings in our skin. And the olfactory nerve ending can actually trigger wound healing. So when the key fits the lock, the olfactory nerve ending triggers a signal to the cells, which creates cellular regeneration, which can heal a wound. We have the endocannabinoid system, which was popularized when cannabis started being used again after being illegal for such a long time. In the U.S., I know across the world, there's still countries that it's very, very strongly illegal. But the endocannabinoid system, the key, like, CBD, which became a very popular compound out of cannabis, it binds with the endocannabinoid receptor in the skin, and that's an anti-inflammatory. There's actually receptors, or the essential oil compounds, that bind with the endocannabinoid receptors, like copaiba. And in that oil, caryophyllene is the chemical compound. It binds with the receptor, and it also triggers an anti-inflammatory response. So to understand this receptor science is actually a very, very good approach. Now, this is the direct communication. This is not your language. This is the way the essential oils communicate with you on a physiological level. So the essential oils communicate. Isn't that the title of what I did here? Yeah, see? I actually knew what I was talking about when I put that title on there. Hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, APA axis. When you are stressed out, this axis is triggered. It's the one that releases cortisol. It releases adrenaline. It creates the fight or flight response, the imbalance in the autonomic nervous system. So the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is a very important thing to understand. If you don't know the details, no big deal. The essential oils are doing the work for you without you knowing the information. But what you want to understand is that stress affects the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. And so your essential oils can go in and alleviate the stress and create more balance within that system, which also is going to create balance in the autonomic nervous system. And an imbalance in the HPA axis also triggers a negative response in the NICE network, which means the nervous system, immune system, cutaneous, your skin, endocrine, hormonal system. The neuroimmunocutaneous endocrine network, when you use essential oils, we bring balance into that system. When that system is out of balance, and it doesn't matter how it gets out of balance. It could be the nervous system that's out of balance, which creates an imbalance in the immune system, skin, and the endocrine system. It could be an imbalance in hormones, and that's going to throw it out of balance, the nervous system, the immune system, and the skin. So we need to understand that this is one thing, all right? And in our modern medical system, everything is isolated. And this is why holistic became such an important aspect to wellness, is because we need to understand we are not separate systems. We are one system. And that actually gets even larger. I mean, holistic is just infinite. You could always connect with who we are physiologically and from a wellness perspective. So putting a balance in the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and balance in neuroimmunocutaneous endocrine network is part of your communication therapy. When you're using essential oils, the more you understand about how they work there, oh man, the therapy is just going to be amazing. This is something that is so cool that, I said this already, nothing new here. I've just found ways to package it much more effectively. And one of the ways was looking into the work of Amir Raz. I just recently discovered this guy, and it's just been amazing in the way that I am able to define and understand the ability to create therapeutic results through language, through words, through communication. This is often called the placebo effect. We like the placebo effect. We like what the placebo effect has done. And so when we understand suggestion, what we're doing is and I've in a way already said this, your words are changing the physiology. Your words are changing that APA access. Your words are changing the NICE network. Your words are communicating in a way that creates a response in the human body. Check out Amir Raz's information. He's got some TED Talks, all kinds of cool stuff. He actually has a book about suggestion. You're really going to understand how this works. And everything that I'm saying has science to back up that we can create therapeutic differences. We can create physiological response in a positive way through our language, through suggestion. So suggestion, let me just read through these real quick. Suggestion operates top down. What that means is that we're starting with a language. We're starting from in a way, outside. When I talk outside, inside out. And so the suggestion, expectation, attention, it modulates the perception before sensory input is processed. When you're working with suggestion, and we're saying that it creates that, before a sensory input. Okay, so before I touch, before I use a product, my language, my suggestion is already putting the person into a healing process. Pretty cool, but that's how it works. Now, it shapes how the brain interprets incoming signals, altering autonomic and stress responses. So that's the HPA axis. We're going to be changing how stress is perceived through suggestion, modulates activity in the HPA axis, influencing cortisol and stress signaling, altering HPA signaling, reorganizes communication across the NICE network. I've already talked about that, affecting skin response, immune activity, and endocrine balance. These are three really important things. When we talk about bringing balance into the skin, we often talk about, well, we don't talk enough about it, but the immune system. A strong immune system means healthy skin or healthier skin. A weak immune system means you can have challenges with skin condition. Hormone balance, that comes up a lot, doesn't it? Well, my hormones are out of balance, and so that's why I have this, and that's why I have that. I always associate hormone balance either dietary or stress related. I guess there can be conditions where the hormones are out of balance. And I'm not talking about, generally it's, we're talking about female reproductive issues when we talk about hormones. And, an imbalance in the hormones, we could talk about PMS or menopause. Now, changes in the menstrual cycle and changes in the life cycle are not out of balance. The hormones are not out of balance. I'm not a female, so I can't talk directly from experience, but because of the business I've been in, I understand women and hormonal issues. And what I've found is that there are other conditions that produce hormonal imbalance. And generally that's stress, big time, because the HPA axis and the NICE network are showing us that these are things that are related to hormonal imbalance. Now, through repetition and sensory association, this top-down modulation recalibrates how the body interprets external stress over time. Repetition and sensory association. Repetition is really important. Now, as a therapist, you have somebody in your room and you're going to see them in 6 weeks, a month, whatever your scheduling is. And what are you doing in that in-between time? How are you creating repetition? Retailing. Retailing just sounds like a salesy word. So instead of thinking about it as retailing, what I'm talking about here is I am talking about sending the person home with you. You're sending them home with the scent memory bond. You're sending them home with the tools to continue the work that you did. If you give them systems of application, it's creating a repetition. If you send them home with affirmations, you're sending them home with repetition. Repetition is repeated suggestion. Suggestion creates a physiological response, and in this case, a positive physiological response, or the placebo effect. Placebo is a therapeutic tool. Use it. Don't be afraid of it. Placebo is great. Even if you don't use anything else and placebo works, cool. Keeps your costs down. All right, let's take a look at this. You gotta love AI, man. You come up with ideas and go, hey, make this graphic. And it did. So now I want to talk about verbal cues. And it's, what I'm talking about here is how verbal cues shape skin and nervous system response. That's what I've been talking about already, right? That's what I've been talking about. And when we look at this, let me give you some ideas of language that you can use. So like I said, I want the language to be positive. So examples of this, if we're looking at it from plant identity, that's the language underneath that graphic there, that image. And the suggestion is for root or grounding. The person is kind of scattered and we want to kind of bring them into their center and plant their feet on the earth. And so we're talking about the plant that's in your process, right? So whatever the plant is, vetiver would be a good example. So let's say, vetiver carries a signal of stability. The nervous system and skin orient toward steadiness. So we're giving positive suggestion there. Stability, nervous system, steadiness. You're producing language that works here. Over to the right there, chemistry-informed suggestion. Now we're talking from a therapeutic outcome, repair orientation. So we're talking about an oil and it carries information associated with repair and cellular organization. I can talk about that from the chemical compound. So if I talk about, helichrysum contains ketones and they're associated with repair and cellular organization. Somebody that's more chemistry oriented, science organization, you're giving or oriented, you're giving them the language that they can associate for their own perspective about what they're looking for. Now, as it's introduced, tissue is guided toward balance and renewal. So what we're talking about here is the communication of the oil and the cell receptors, the receptors in the skin. So we're talking from a scientific basis, that one positive affirmation in what you're trying to do. Now, from a cognitive suggestive level, you can say, well, there's nothing here that needs managing. That is a powerful suggestion. What you're telling this guest now is that they don't have to do anything. They don't have to try. The system can allow this response to happen on its own. Why is that so powerful? We're always thinking we need something out here to fix me in here. Well, what this introduces from a cognitive or a mental level is that your body is the healer. Let the body do what the body can do. What we're doing is we're just giving it some direction. We're just giving it some ease. We're just trying to remove the obstacles that may be interrupting with our therapeutic outcome. Now, how do we use that system in treatment? These are the steps that we're doing in this system. We're defining the therapeutic goal verbally. So what you're doing is you're creating a story. Whoever your guest is, you want to tell the story in a way that they will respond most positively to it. That's your therapeutic goal. And you always need to have a goal. Intention. Intention is your focus. Intention is your therapeutic goal. So if we go back to the acne example, the example is, my therapeutic goal is clear, healthy, vital skin. And so your therapeutic goal can be verbally translated into that direct language or in another way that you think the guest will respond the most positively to it. You're going to frame the story and plant identity. So you want to give it a good foundation right? You want to root your intention and your therapeutic goal. And story is always the best way to do this. If you have other guests that you've resolved and had good responses, you can use that as part of your story. You don't necessarily have to name or really give too much, information about the person, but the process, the results, what you saw, a story that goes from, and I talked about this earlier, where it talks about your process, where it talks about the flow, where it talks about where your method and how you're going from here to here to here, and your outcome, which is the positive outcome of clear, healthy skin, if acne was the condition that you were dealing with. You're going to introduce scent after orientation is set. I have systems for this, creating a scent, emotion, memory bond. When you create that bond, you want to make sure that the guest is already oriented into that healing arena. And what I mean by that is everything we've talked about, the introduction, the environment that the person walks into, how they were, introduced at the front desk, how they were introduced to you, how you communicate with them. Everything is about orienting that person into a relaxed, I'm feeling like I'm getting what I want from this service feeling, even before you start. When the person is in that healing space, that's when you bring out the scented products. Now, if your space, which every wellness center is going to have an aroma, every place has an aroma. There is no such thing as fragrance free. I know that was a big trend for a while. We're starting to get rid of that. Oh, am I so happy that's going away? No such thing as a fragrance free environment. And so your environment already is creating a memory association. And there's systems. I have scent design systems for how the scent signature fragrance of your wellness center can be consistent all the way through, instead of introducing this scent with this product, this scent with this product, and then this one, and then this one, and then you're closing and you're opening, and all these other fragrances that are being delivered. There's a way to create that as a system. So plan identity, like however you define that, these are things you want to bring into that story that you're telling. Now, you're bringing the orientation in after you introduce, orientation, person's relaxed, that's when you introduce the scent, if that's available. I have other ways to do that as well that I can teach you. And then you make observations. If you see somebody kind of tighten up, it may be because that scent has a negative association. Now, this is challenging when you're actually in your spa or in your practice, and these are the products that you're using. And so your language can help bring comfort. And your language should start, the orientation should start before the scent. So you're trying to direct it and almost introduce it as a new fragrance, which it probably is unless they've had the products before. The Sentia flow system. As I was putting this together, I realized that I just created another system. I think this is my 4th trademark system that I've developed based around how to use essential oils in a systematic way. In this way, you're creating not only the therapeutic properties of the essential oils, but through suggestion and verbal communication, you're actually creating a healing placebo effect. It's got to be another word for placebo. Sentia flow. There we go. No longer placebo. And what this system is all about, bring this up. Intention sets direction, story frames expectation, structure organizes sequence, scent anchors a response. This is everything I just taught you. So the Sentia flow system, it's about intention. The intention is creating, even before you start, it's creating your therapeutic outcome. Positive language always. Positive language always. You want to talk about the outcome as you want it, not about you're going to eliminate the acne or you're going to, eliminate wrinkles, whatever it is you're trying to do, right? You're already there. Your skin is calm. People have rosacea, eczema. Your skin is calm. It has healed, whatever the language, the outcome, right? Now, again, the story, whatever your story is, and this becomes something you need to practice, and it's your story, right? I can give you ideas, but it's your story, okay? So this is expressing, this is part of your placebo. This is part of the power of suggestion. I highly recommend reading about suggestion, especially Mir Raz. I don't know. I haven't found anyone else who does this. I mean, there's a lot of other science out there. You know, if you look up suggestion and therapeutic results or the physiological changes through suggestion, excuse me. Your methodology, your structure, your treatment system, you know, this also organizes the outcome. So your sequence, your structure organizes sequence. The sequence also delivers a message. So you know this. I mean, you were taught this. You just weren't, maybe you weren't taught it. I mean, some people are taught this in you know, starting in aesthetic school. And what you're learning is a certain flow in your treatment. Now, when your sequence is also part of your story, part of your outcome, this is where it becomes more powerful. And then scent anchors it all. Everything you've done is now anchored with the scent, memory, emotion bond. When you send the person home with the same aromas in the skincare, with sequencing, with technique, with methods, with affirmations, with all of the things I've listed, you have created such a powerful, powerful therapeutic outcome and therapy that a person will just, you're going to see them a lot. That's what's going to happen, because there's so many aspects to this that's healing on a holistic level. It's not isolated. So that's my story for today. If you have a spa, if you have a wellness center, if you have a resort, what I'm doing now, and I just started doing this recently. I mean, I've been around globally working with resorts and spas, but now I'm really doing it as workshops, because I want to bring this not just to your staff, but to your guests. I do things like storytelling, and we create a story, or we take a story and we create a blend. So the story becomes the scent. And that's actually everything. You know, when I talked about acne as example through this whole thing, acne is a story. Acne tells a story. And so when you have that story, you know what to create therapeutically from your essential oils. So that's a fun one for guests. I do a lot of presence and stress, relaxation, stress relief, and anxiety. You know, I do workshops based around integration and experiential. It's playing with the oils. It's playing with the ideas. It's playing with the stories. So these are things that you can book me on. This QR code gets you to my calendar, support@jimharrison.com. That's me and my email. And of course, if you go to my website, you'll find a lot more information there. So as always, it's always a pleasure, always fun to be here talking with you guys. I haven't even looked at the comments yet. Hi, how's everyone doing? Caprice Luxury from Morocco. Oh man, I had such a great time in Morocco. It was an aromatherapy tour that was designed by people who knew nothing about aromatherapy. So we didn't do a lot with aromatherapy, but we did tour, and there's so many great oils, the Atlas cedarwood, cistus, this is argan oil, so many great oils that come out of Morocco. I really want to come back, and it's looking like we're going to be planning that again, hanging out in Morocco. It's really cool. And Seattle. Hey, do I see you? Well, you're looking out my window. It's kind of rainy in Seattle. We haven't much rain in our winter here. Well, everyone else in the U.S. is freezing. Our temperatures are above normal. Weather is weird, but hi, Seattle. And Deepa, you're from India. Hi, love it when I, talking with people from India and from L.A. Ina, I love it when you show up. You're just, always a best friend here. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, I'll take some time to answer them. If not, I will not take time to answer them. But what I will tell you is that I have more information to share with you. It's on LinkedIn, and so share these live streams. Please share. And if you're on YouTube, hit the button, subscribe, bells, whistles, whatever it is you do on YouTube. I'm always posting more seminars, more live streams on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Hang out with me. I have the information. If you guys have anything that you want to know, DM me, email me, whatever. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say for today. Actually, I'm never done talking, so I better just stop, right? I want to thank everyone for showing up, and I look forward to seeing you really soon.